All right, everybody. Hello. My name is Tara Stevenson, and I serve as the Dean of Student Engagement and Career Development here at Flagler College. We are back again for another workshop Wednesday. Can't believe we are just rolling on through these. Today's view, if you're watching from either our Facebook page, my Twitter feed, or our Flagler College YouTube channel, it looks a little bit different because I've put a PowerPoint up so that we've got some good information about the GRE. On Instagram, I'm sorry, you're just getting me right now. I was a little bit nervous to stream it to you all today, so we'll definitely check that out another time. But on Wednesdays, we wear pink, and so I'm definitely rocking my pink, but it's also important to bring awareness for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So please make sure that you're doing your part to continue awareness. And then my purple ribbon today is also for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. You can pick up your ribbon in the Student Center at the information desk if you'd like to grab one for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, or they are giving away pink ribbons in our health center if you'd like to join them in their space to grab a ribbon and help us bring awareness to two causes, awareness, ideas, processes, everything like that. October is pretty big, so I wanted to make sure that we're bringing note to that. But today we are going to go over the GRE. I'm going to preface this by saying it is not going to be a prep. We're not going to go over a lot of specific content. It's going to be more what you can expect from the test itself, how the test is made up, what some of the different questions look like. But this is not intended to be a study session. That's going to be kind of on your own. Later on, we are all at different and varying levels of where we're at in our studying for the GRE. The other thing I want to share is that we won't be going over the LSAT or the GMAT today, but I do have some different resources for those. After today's workshop, if you would like a copy of this presentation or any of our other resources that we have, please feel free to email us at careerdevelopment@flagler.edu, and we'd be more than happy to send them your way. But let's go ahead and get started. I've put this website up here, www.ets.org/GRE. There are so many different ways that we can prep for the GRE. And there are so many different ways that if we are financially able to invest into that, then there are different options. If we're not at a certain place, there are a lot of free options. This is a fantastic website to start at. And I have to give credit to the people at ETS and the makers of the GRE because a lot of this information is coming from them. The information that I am going to be sharing with you is something that they've provided as a training for educators to be able to share with you. And so I was able to go as somebody who works within education so that I could help train our students and graduates on how to go about through the GRE. However, dependent on your financial situation and what you are looking to invest, please stop at this website, again, ets.org/GRE, and check out so many of their free resources. The makers of the GRE have a test prep guide that I myself have gotten through Amazon. I'm getting no endorsements for this, please know that. But I think it was like $26. And I am a firm believer that why not get the prep that I need from the makers of the test. However, if that process is not working best for me, then there are other things. I also need to make sure I put in a really good plug for our adult and continuing education, as I believe they are still offering some online test prep. We'll go through some different ways that you can gauge where you're at and where you should be prepping. But I do think it's a best recommendation, best practice to get a baseline for where you're at and then go from there. All right, so the graduate record exam is what the GRE stands for. It is computer-based. You may take it once every 21 days, up to 5 times in a 12-month period, at the cost of $205. We'll go through what testing looks like and what you can expect when you arrive to the test location. We'll also go through the process of canceling scores. And so if you just know that you've bombed it, what can happen then? What does that mean for the cost and for retaking it? The test itself is about 3 hours and 45 minutes. Here are some resources to prepare. As I've mentioned, we've got the ets.org website, Vocab Sushi, if you really want to look at something along those lines, that's been a good resource. Kaplan is a test prep organization that does offer a lot of different resources. There are different apps and stuff like that you can add. And then Princeton Review, they offer a free GRE test that you can take. Go through the motions, and that's where I say get your baseline, see where you need to really invest your time. Because again, today we're just going to go over the format and what you can expect from the GRE itself. So what to bring? An acceptable and valid ID with name, signature, and photograph to be admitted. Good rule of thumb is bring 2 just to be safe. These are strictly enforced. It's for your benefit so that they know that they are looking at your test. The names of the schools where you would like to send your scores. This is something that if you're considering 5 schools and you'd like to send those test scores off to them right as you're taking it, you can indicate those prior to taking the test. Now, this is where I will put a plug into it, and I'll probably talk about it later when we're going over what scoring looks like. You take the test and you have rocked it, you're feeling really good and comfortable, and those schools receive your scores. Other scenario, you take the test and you are thinking, I completely and totally bombed that one. That was not my best work. I am feeling very just anxious about what I just did. You can actually cancel your scores at that point. You will not be sending those scores to those schools if you cancel them. One thing that I have been told is that when you cancel your scores at this point, you will get an unofficial score of what you just got. So then you could walk away knowing, phew, I dodged a bullet right there, and I know that I was supposed to cancel because I didn't do my best work. Or I guess the other side is you could see how well you did. But know that there are other opportunities for you to take it. It's kind of one of those like, what's the better deal? And I really truly encourage you to think about what's best in your gut. What is your gut feeling telling you? All right, so what's not allowed in there is food, drinks, tobacco, cell phones, smartphones, any sort of electronic, and then personal items other than identification. They will provide you with scratch paper. They will provide you with everything else. So the testing site, we recommend arriving about 30 minutes early and figure out where you're going prior. There's nothing like starting that day anxious. What is traffic going to look like? What is weather going to look like? Am I not going to know where I'm going once I get to the location because of the room or anything like that? I know we tell students all the time that there are 2 locations that are up in Jacksonville. One of them I know is, I believe, close to the University of North Florida's campus. Well, depending on when you're traveling and if we are not in a pandemic and everybody is taking 9B and 9A or 295 East, it may be a parking lot depending on when your test is scheduled, or you may be able to breeze through if construction is working in your favor. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I can't stress enough. If you are rushing and you are already feeling anxious about the test, like you've added double anxiety to yourself. You may be photographed, fingerprinted, videotaped. There are confidentiality agreements. Test takers receive a supply of scratch paper, as I mentioned. The testing room has proctors and electronic surveillance. The test takers read the screens that contain the following information. So there are test center regulations, what timing looks like, break and test information, and then the repeater policy. And so again, if you would like to retake it at another time, there are certain parameters within that. And then they will assign you a specific seat and computer. If only we got to choose our favorite seat and know exactly what was going to be the best for us, but we're going to leave it in fate's hand and the proctor. So the test format, you get to move freely through an entire section. You get to preview and review capabilities within a section. And I know this is a lot of text as if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube. And so we will go through some visuals. If you're a visual learner like myself, I need to kind of see it versus just hearing it. but a few different things to keep in mind. There is a mark and review feature to tag questions. And so if you think about when you're taking a test or an assessment or something like that, and right off the bat, you know the answer to something, but you look at something else and you're like, ooh, I am not sure. And all of a sudden there's this time limit that's on it. And so then your heart rate starts going and you're nervous about how to get through all of them that are in that area. You have the ability to click a tag or a mark and review. So then after you go through all the questions, you can then choose how much time you allot to go back to those that you have marked and reviewed. Let's say you complete a question and you're like, you know what, I still want to mark it because I want to double check my work if I have time later on. Absolutely, mark and review it. I mean, why not? It's a nice little perk that I will tell you, when I took the GRE forever ago, I really wish that they had so much of this stuff when I took it. You will have the ability to change and edit answers within a section, but once you've completed that section, it is submitted and ready to go. There's an on-screen calculator that's provided for the quantitative reasoning. We will say this multiple times because the math area seems to cause a lot of people some unease when it comes to the GRE. There is nothing above a Algebra 2 level on the GRE. And so that does include a little bit of geometry. However, it's typically at this point when I say, when was the last time that you did any sort of geometry or a level 2 algebra? And so knowing things like the Pythagorean theorem or quantitative reasoning or a quantitative formula or all these fun different things that we may or may not have liked back when we took them in high school, but now we are being tested on them. And so these are a few things to bring back into your knowledge toolkit, that when I say find the radius of a circle or what is the diameter or anything like that, you know those formulas and can be able to find it out. The tasks format, such as numeric entry and highlighting format with a sentence and a passage to answer a question. So there are different formats of questions, which we'll go through some different examples, but you'll be able to see that the biggest thing, so I try to do this with all of my different workshops, is that if there is like one big tip that I can have you walk away with, is read the directions. I know that sounds simple and super and easy and kind of silly, but that is what is the most successful part about the GRE, is that if you read the directions, it sets you up for success. So some questions will say, mark the correct or the best correct answer. They may say, mark all that apply. It may say, highlight the sentence that answers this question. It might say, highlight the passage that answers this question. Those are 4 different types of questions that I just provided for you. Those are questions that can absolutely trip you up or affect your scoring if we're just not thinking about it. One little tidbit that we'll be able to look at is the format of some of these questions does also help you with knowing whether you're supposed to answer more than one or possibly just the best one. You'll go through one section at a time and only for the time that's allowed for that one section. And then once you complete a section, you cannot go back. So again, you've got that mark and review within a section and you can use all your time that's allotted for that one section. But then afterwards, you cannot go back and review anything from there. All right, so the structure of the GRE. You'll have analytical writing, which everybody will typically start with the analytical writing. You'll have one analyze an issue task for 30 minutes, and then you'll have one analyze an argument task for 30 minutes. And they may be flip-flopped. It doesn't, I don't know if you'll get necessarily that one first. Verbal reasoning and then quantitative reasoning may come next. And so you'll have approximately 20 questions per section there that are 30 minutes each. And then depending on if you're looking at subject-specific GRE tests, we're not going to be covering that. You'll definitely want to check out the website for what that looks like. So quantitative reasoning, this is what it will look like as an example of one that's the math section. So you can see, and I apologize, I've kind of mixed up my presentation ones. It gives you lots of instructions. You can see that menu up on the top. You can see how there's going to be different things that you'll be able to set up. So before we jump into the question examples, you'll have a 10-minute break after the 3rd section. You'll have 1 minute breaks between the other sections. And so prioritize that time, absolutely. You can replenish the scratch paper. It's just gonna be like regular copy paper. And the section timing will not stop if you take an unscheduled break. And so if you do need to use the facilities, if you do need to stretch for just a minute, your time is still going if you choose to take one that hasn't been scheduled. So as we mentioned, these are the different sections. You've got analytical writing, which will always be first. Verbal reasoning will be broken into 3 possible areas for your questions: reading comprehension, text completion, and sentence equivalence. Your quantitative reasoning will be basic concepts of algebra, geometry, and data analysis, and then numeric entry. Numeric entry is something to definitely keep an eye out for, because there will be boxes that you will actually type into. Is it going to be a fraction? Is it going to be a decimal? Read the directions, because it may say round to the tens decimal, round to the hundredths decimal, or anything like that. My daughter, who is in 3rd grade, is learning all about that stuff, and it's coming back to me. And I know that I'm not one that necessarily follows those specific directions. That'll knock points right off your score if you're not following exactly what they're saying in those directions. And I know I'm driving that home so much, but I think we get so nervous about some of these things because we're not sure what to expect. And so if we can take some of those nerves away right now by talking about what you can expect and what the test will look like, then hopefully that can make you feel a bit more confident later on. So the analytical writing will provide focused responses based on the tasks presented, so you can accurately demonstrate your skill in directly responding to a task. That's a lot of words. There's 2 30-minute tasks in one section only. So let's look at what this means. And so the task would be write a response in which you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the claim and the reason on which that claim is based. So this is asking you 2 things right here. The first is whether you agree or disagree. And then the second is the reason behind it. And so we talk about this all the time when we're looking at graduate school applications and the statements of purpose, is what's the prompt? What is it asking you? Have we answered all of those different pieces? The argument task now. Write a response in which you discuss what specific evidence is needed to evaluate the argument and explain how the evidence would weaken or strengthen the argument. So now they're asking for a bit more. They want to know pieces from that passage that support what you're stating. So here's some different tips on approaching the writing tasks. Spend a few minutes thinking about the topic and specific directions and planning a response. You've got scratch paper. Go ahead and outline what those paragraphs are going to look like. Again, pay specific attention and close attention to the directions. Support the position on the issue with reasons and examples drawn from reading, experience, observations, and/or academic studies. Leave time to read what they have written and make any revisions that you think are necessary. And avoid excessive irony or humor that may be misinterpreted by the readers. You don't know who's going to be reading your writing pieces. And so pull out the jargon or pull out, if you're trying to make a joke or anything like that, and just stick straight forward to it. All right, the verbal reasoning section. So now we're jumping to another section. Again, I promise I will have some screenshots and examples of what this can look like for you. I just had them out of order a little bit in my presentation. So there's an emphasis on complex reasoning skills using text-based materials such as reading passages. These are going to be questions and reading passages that have to do with natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. But please know that you will not have to have specific knowledge in any of those areas to be able to answer these. They will provide all of the information in those passages that you would need to know. They're basically trying to figure out your comprehension from it, and if you can answer the questions that they've provided for you. There's no antonyms or analogies. And so if we have anybody who has heard about the previous GRE from way back when, there was constant discussion on analogies and antonyms, and a word is to this word as another word is to blank, and you had to choose it. There's no more of that. You'll have 2 30-minute sections, 20 questions in each section, and 3 question types. So those 3 question types, again, are looking at reading comprehension. You may be asked to highlight a sentence or highlight passages, or you'll be given some multiple choice. Text completion, this is where you will be selecting words from text boxes that are provided. So they might have a sentence for you, or they might have a passage for you, and you have to select the best answers to be able to put within those. I guess it's like a GRE version of the Mad Libs. And then lastly, sentence equivalence consists of a single sentence with 1 blank and 6 answer choices. And it's a required selection of 2 answer choices. So again, what are we going to always say? Look at the directions and see what it tells us. And so here is an example of multiple choice where it says select 1 answer choice. You can see that it's now bolded in that last answer right there. Here is a reading comprehension. The screen looks pretty much the same, but you have multiple choice where it's select 1 or more choices. And so now you can see that there's an X in the first answer and the third answer. A rule of thumb for me that I try to remember is if it's a circle, that means I'm gonna answer with 1 best answer. If it's a square, that means that I might have more than 1 answer. Select a passage in here. And so this is where it's asking us to select the sentence that distinguishes 2 ways of integrating rock and classical music. And so you will actually take your cursor and highlight that area, and that's submitting the answer to that question. Text completion, as we said, it consists of 1 or more sentences with 1 to 3 blanks that you're going to have to choose. And you're answering choices that would be alternates for filling in those blanks. Your answer choices are independent, and it requires you to grasp the meaning of the sentences by analyzing the relationships among the parts. So again, this is like some pretty heavy stuff, and so thinking about, is this an area that you would need to focus a little bit more on? So this is how they will look. As you can see, it's quite an extensive passage that's listed right there. But they've given you blank 1 with 3 words to choose from. Blank 2, it's got 3 words to choose from. And blank 3, it has 3 words to choose from, and you get to select which one. They are not, the bullet point on the previous screen where it says that they're independent. The choice that you make in that first group, it doesn't necessarily direct you to the answer in the next one. And then lastly, in our verbal reasoning is sentence equivalence questions, which consists of a single sentence with 1 blank and 6 answer choices. And again, it requires you to select 2. And so again, you've got those squares. And so because there are squares next to our answers, we know that we are going to be selecting more than 1. And so now we can see that an X went through 2 of those. Let's go ahead and jump on into our third and final section of the GRE, which is quantitative reasoning. It is basic concepts of arithmetic, algebra, geometry, data analysis, which does include a high school level math and statistics. But again, no higher than an Algebra 2 level. Here's the fun little terms that people all of a sudden are like, I kind of remember that, but I don't know what it actually is. So quadratic equations and Pythagorean theorem. And so when I say x2 plus x squared plus x2 minus 4 equals what? Thinking about how you break apart those into those parentheses. Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. What does that do? Those are all different things to think about. Quantitative comparison, so comparing 2 quantities, could be other things. And then that numeric entry where you're actually typing in a number into a box. This may be fractions and percent answers. You may have negative integers. That's a fun vocabulary word for if you're into math, you know what an integer is. Those may be included using the hyphen. And then the numerator and denominator, fun, more vocabulary words. Those will be entered into separate boxes for fraction responses. And so do you know where the numerator goes and do you know where the denominator goes? And those are divided into 2 35-minute sections, again with 20 questions each. So here are our different types of questions. Multiple choice, select 1. Multiple choice, select 1 or more. quantitative comparisons, numeric entry ones. Some questions may have a data interpretation set. And so you may have a table or a chart that is presented to you, and you may have one or more questions that deal with that same exact chart or data set. And again, there is an on-screen calculator that is provided. Here is one question. There are circles, and so we know this will be one answer. We have another question. One thing that I think is very interesting on this question is that they have underline, indicate all such answers. They're also in boxes. We will add our little X for which ones are correct. The on-screen calculator is provided here to show you what you can expect. It is not one of those graphing calculators whatsoever. It is a basic calculator. So those fun TI-83s that used to do all of those formulas for us, we will not be afforded those with the on-screen calculator. Next, we jump into quantitative comparison questions. And so questions of this type ask you to compare two quantities and determine which of the statements might be true. Is quantity A greater? Is quantity B greater? The two quantities are equal, or the relationship of the two cannot be determined with the information that's provided. I will tell you that answer right there always tripped me up because I felt like it was a trick question. So if you're joining us by looking on the screen, you can see that there is a triangle that's up at the top. It's giving you quantities there. This is where you're going to have to know a few different formulas. There are circles, and we know that circles will have one response for it. The on-screen calculator, those are available for every question. So let's dive into a little bit more about what this on-screen calculator does and the functions and how it operates. You can operate it with the keyboard or the mouse. So you can click on it on the screen or you can use the keyboard. 4 arithmetic functions: square root, memory, and parentheses. That is it. One thing is it does have a transfer display button. And so whatever is pulled up there, you can click that transfer display button and it will toss it right into the answer if you have to put any sort of data entry for a question. One thing to know with this one that I think trips people up is if you've ever done percent calculations on a calculator, it typically gives you a decimal. And when they're asking for a percent, they always say multiply it by 100 to move that decimal place over. If you transfer the display from the calculator, it will not move that decimal place over for a full percentage. And so if you are looking for 30% and it says 0.3 in your calculator and you click transfer display, 0.3 is what will be transferred over. So that's a fun little tidbit for you, is to look back at the question. Are they asking for you to round up, round down? Are they asking you for a percentage or the actual number? It does respect the order of operations. This is PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, exponentials. I'm not sure of that one, but it's that little number that's up on the top. Multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. And so making sure that you know those two. I feel like I'm getting my own little math lesson here. Most questions do not require difficult computations. And so the calculator really should only be used when you need it. I don't want it to be a crutch that you feel like you aren't able to kind of move forward because the calculator isn't working in your favor. The on-screen calculator, here's another look at what it looks like a little bit bigger. And then again, standard math conventions are followed for rounding. Whew, we went through those 3 sections fairly quickly. That's a whole lot. But again, think about, what am I walking into when it comes to the GRE? And then you take some time to study the content. As educators, we have been trained that students and test takers should really concentrate more on this expectation of what the test will look like versus content. I know that that can cause a little bit of nervousness with us, especially if there's one of these areas that we are not as familiar with. However, take some time to know what you're walking into. And so once all sections have been completed, as we talked about in the beginning, you can choose to report your scores or you can cancel them. If you report them, an unofficial score will automatically become a part of your 5-year GRE record, and that's what gets sent to those schools. It is considered an unofficial score because your writing hasn't been analyzed yet and it hasn't been scored yet. So we don't know what that's going to do to your overall score. The scoring is between 130 and 170. And then the analytical writing section is scored on a 0 to 6 score scale in half-point increments. So, as I mentioned, we do have other information about the GMAT, and so this is my presentation that covers all of those. I haven't seen any questions come in either through Facebook or YouTube or through our Instagram channel. I know this was like a run through of what the GRE looks like. In our next workshops, we are going to be talking about how to search for graduate schools or all the different things to consider with graduate schools, and the GRE can or cannot play into that. I have a lot of students that will come in and say, I only want to look at schools that don't take the GRE. I would really encourage you to think about, why are you saying that? Is that because we've got some test anxiety that we'd like to work through? Is it because you would need some accommodations? And we can absolutely dive more into what the makers of the GRE offer for accommodations. Is it because it's a financial burden? It's a financial investment, and that is causing us a little bit of nerves. Then let's look through what are our different options and how does that look? Schools are all different in how they weigh the GRE. I like to give myself as an example here. When I was looking at graduate schools, each school considered the GRE in all different ways. I had one school that it was never even brought up, and I don't even think it was a part of the application. I had other schools that it was a required piece of the application, but was still never brought up. And I will never forget, I did have one school, I went through a full 2 days of interviewing for their graduate program, and my very last interview was with 2 faculty members who pulled up my GRE scores. And I am not a good test taker. I am always very transparent with that. I'm more of a doer, where I like to be able to do things or show them versus the standardized testing. And they looked at me and said, your test scores just aren't gonna get you into this program. And that's what they chose to value. It ended up working out for the best. I know that was not the best place for me. But we can have individual conversations with you on how does the GRE play into your graduate school plans. For timing on taking the GRE, and this will be the last thing that we cover today, I always recommend taking the GRE in the summer between your 3rd and 4th year at Flagler. So the summer before you're getting ready to graduate. That's the ideal time, is take it when you don't have any other classes going. Take it when your mind is maybe able to focus right on that GRE versus all the other classes that you're going for. And your scores are good for 5 years. And so it allows for you to have those scores for your entire senior year, so that when you're applying, you're meeting any deadlines. It also, on the flip side, gives you time to retake the exam if you need to, while still meeting those deadlines. Now, I understand that timing is not going to work for everybody, so then we just have to figure out, when is the timing best for you? Is studying over our Thanksgiving break and then taking it during winter break the best time for you? Is it studying and taking it on a weekend day that's while you're in school? I mean, every situation is going to be unique, and figuring out the best time for you while working with your application deadlines for the different schools that you're considering. So thank you all so much for joining me again today. Hopefully you are getting different things out of these workshops each week. Our goal is to easily bring this content to you, and then maybe set up some one-on-ones afterwards if we can talk about it a little bit more and set you up for some good success. Looking for co-curricular credit. Honestly, you guys are making me feel so good about emailing with our co-curricular credit. It really does mean a lot. So we are going to go ahead and use the word test. TEST. Go ahead and email that word to careerdevelopment@flagler.edu, and we'll make sure that we get you in there for co-curricular credit. As always, if you'd like to dive more into these topics one-on-one, we are offering in-person, phone, and virtual appointments, and we'd be more than happy to chat with you and outline some different things. As I mentioned, next week, we're going to go over how to search for graduate school and what are some different things to consider. We will then roll that into preparing your statement of purpose, which is typically your essay that's submitted. Oh, sorry, on Instagram, I'm losing you a little bit. Oh, you're back on Instagram. And then go through maybe some interviewing tips, because you will be interviewing for jobs, internships, and a lot of times graduate schools have interviews as well. So wishing you all continued health and safety. I'll keep saying it. Mask up. Make your plan to vote. We are getting close. And so whether you are able to vote early or whether you have a plan for voting on the day of the election, please know that your voice and your opinion matters. Let's keep bringing awareness to breast cancer as well as domestic violence. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you soon. Thanks again for joining us.